Hey guys, tonight we're taking a stroll through the crowded, perfumed streets of ancient Babylon. Imagine the air thick with the scent of exotic spices, the chatter of merchants haggling over silk and gems, and everywhere you look, men and women painted like living sculptures. You probably won't survive this era's beauty routine, but at least you won't forget it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the uneven cobblestones of Babylon's main thoroughfare, a dazzling marketplace stretching as far as the eye can see. Stalls draped in vibrant fabrics display everything from Persian spices to Egyptian gold, while merchants beckon passers-by with tempting wares and even more tempting promises. But what really catches your eye are the people themselves. Babylonian merchants don't just peddle luxury goods. They are luxury goods. Their skin gleams with heavy, oily layers of kohl, applied thick around the eyes, making them look more like theatrical performers than business people. You pause to watch one merchant, a stout, middle-aged man with bronzed skin and a meticulously groomed beard. His eyelids are a deep, inky black, extending in dramatic wings that flare out toward his temples. He smirks, his lips shining with a coppery red gloss, as he haggles with a customer over a bolt of silk. It's not just the men. Women saunter through the marketplace draped in long, flowing robes, their cheeks flushed with vivid rouge, and their hair styled in elaborate braids adorned with gold and silver pins. One woman, her skin nearly white from a dusting of lead-based powder, catches your eye. She cradles a delicate alabaster jar, perfume no doubt, and raises it to her nose, inhaling deeply before nodding her approval to the merchant. In Babylon, appearances are more than just skin deep. A merchant's appearance is his brand, his first line of attack in the cutthroat world of trade. You can almost smell the thick, cloying perfume that hangs in the air. A heady mix of myrrh, frankincense, and something almost musky like the scent of sun-warmed ambergris. It's as if the marketplace itself is a colossal perfume bottle, its contents constantly swirling, mixing and settling over everything in a fragrant haze. But it wasn't always like this. Before Babylon's rise as a commercial powerhouse, the city was a modest settlement of farmers and shepherds. You close your eyes and imagine the sound of livestock, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting from clay ovens. But all that changed when King Hammurabi transformed Babylon into a thriving center of commerce, drawing traders from across Mesopotamia, Persia, and beyond. And with wealth came vanity, or at least a heightened sense of appearances. The more successful a merchant became, the more extravagant his look. Eyes rimmed in black kohl to ward off the evil eye cheeks, painted a shade darker to project confidence and vitality, and perfumes so potent they could almost knock you out. You keep walking the crowd, pressing in on all sides, and you can't help but notice how even the poorest vendors attempt to mimic the opulence of the wealthiest merchants. A boy no older than 12 peddles tiny jars of kohl, a dark, greasy substance made from charred date pits and antimony. Only 2 shekels, he cries, holding one up for you to see. The kohl glistens in the sunlight, its surface as black as a raven's wing, but not everyone approves of this cosmetic arms race. A group of elderly men sits in the shade of a crumbling temple, watching the painted merchants with disdain. They look like harlots, one of them mutters, shaking his head. Like whores and charlatans. His companion nods, scratching at his grizzled beard. In my day, a man's worth was in his word, not his painted face. But the merchants don't seem to care. For them, the right look can mean the difference between a profitable deal and a disastrous one. The city is a theater, and every stall a stage, each merchant a performer, in the grand production of commerce. And in this world, every painted eye and perfumed neck tells a story. Stories we're just beginning to unravel. You find yourself drifting deeper into the marketplace, the chaotic hum of trade growing louder, as you pass stalls selling everything from dyed textiles to finely crafted bronze figurines. Merchants call out to potential buyers, their voices a mixture of charm, desperation, and cunning. The scent of incense mingles with the earthy aroma of fresh clay pots, but it's the perfume that lingers, saturating the air like an invisible fog. Babylon wasn't always this crowded, this loud, this extravagant, but it all began with a man named Hammurabi. You remember him right. The guy with the infamous Code of Laws, the stone tablet that laid down the rules for just about everything, from trade disputes to divorce settlements. Under Hammurabi's rule, Babylon became the beating heart of Mesopotamia's commercial network. Imagine it, caravans stretching across the horizon, donkeys laden with spices from India, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and cedarwood from Lebanon. The city itself swelled with wealth and people, and as the merchant class rose in prominence, so did their desire to flaunt it. You step aside to let a procession of traders pass. Men draped in robes of cobalt blue and emerald green, each shade more striking than the last. Their makeup is just as bold. Eyes painted thickly with kohl so dark it's almost blue in the sunlight, and cheeks dusted with a deep red ochre. One of them, a man with a hawk-like nose and a knowing smile, clinks a heavy gold ring against the bronze jar hanging from his belt. The jar's lid is loose, releasing a sweet, pungent fragrance that prickles your nostrils. A blend of rose oil and ambergris. Perfume wasn't just a luxury. It was a language. In Babylon, a person's scent could convey power, wealth, even the type of deal they were hoping to strike. A merchant selling textiles might douse himself in the essence of myrrh, its spicy, earthy scent suggesting reliability and trustworthiness. Another, hoping to woo a particularly lucrative customer, might splash on a heady floral concoction, jasmine and rose mixed with musk, to project confidence and sensuality. But it wasn't just about smelling good. In a city as crowded as Babylon, where sanitation wasn't exactly top-tier perfume, became a survival tool. The streets were ripe with the stench of rotting fish animal dung and unwashed bodies. You can almost hear the buzz of flies swarming around the fishmonger's stall, the slimy scent of salt-cured eels wafting toward you. No wonder the merchants sought to overpower these foul odors with layers of scented oils and unguents. But there was another reason for all that makeup and perfume. A reason rooted in fear. You can almost see the temple of Ishtar looming above the marketplace, its towering ziggurat casting a long shadow over the stalls below. The goddess of love and war was said to favor those who adorned themselves in beauty, especially those who painted their eyes and scented their bodies. By emulating her, the merchants believed they could draw her favor, or at the very least avoid her wrath. Yet, it wasn't just the gods they were trying to appease. In a city rife with rival merchants and shady deals, appearances could be everything. You spot a man with eyes as sharp as a hawk's, his robes embroidered with delicate golden threads that glitter as he moves. His lips are stained a deep crimson, the color of pomegranate juice, and his cheekbones are dusted with a pale, almost ghostly white powder. He smiles, but it's not a friendly smile. It's the kind of smile that says, "I know something you don't." The use of cosmetics as a form of psychological warfare wasn't lost on Babylon's merchants. Exaggerated features, dark, kohl-rimmed eyes that seemed to stare unblinkingly blood-red lips that suggested ferocity, could intimidate rivals and unnerve potential enemies. And in a marketplace where deception was as common as haggling, every flicker of an eyelid, every smirk, every painted eyebrow could convey an unspoken message. You pass a small stall selling tiny glass vials of scented oils, their labels marked with crude symbols. A crescent moon for jasmine, a rising sun for frankincense, a pair of eyes for myrrh. The merchant, a wiry old man with a face like wrinkled parchment, holds up a vial and waves it under your nose. For luck, he says, his breath smelling faintly of cinnamon. Only 2 shekels. You nod but move on. There's more to learn, much more. You weave your way through the crowded marketplace, sidestepping a group of young men haggling over a bolt of silk the color of storm clouds. The air hangs heavy with the scent of incense and freshly baked flatbread, but it's the makeup that really catches your eye. Everywhere you look, faces are painted in bold, striking colors. Eyes outlined in thick, dark kohl cheeks, streaked with crimson rouge lips, glossed in hues ranging from rose petal pink to burnt copper. Why all this makeup? It wasn't just vanity. In Babylon, appearance was a weapon. You stop in front of a stall where a merchant is carefully applying a fresh layer of kohl to his eyelids using a slender stick made of bone. The kohl glistens in the sunlight, a glossy black line that accentuates his already piercing gaze. It's almost hypnotic, and that's exactly the point. Merchants believed that dark, exaggerated eye makeup had the power to command attention, intimidate rivals, and even repel evil spirits. You might remember the ancient Egyptians doing something similar, lining their eyes with thick rings of black and green pigment. But Babylon took it to another level. Here, the more severe the look, the better. Picture a merchant standing in the middle of a busy square, his eyes painted to look twice as large as they actually are. His cheekbones are carved out with deep red ochre, his lips stained with a mixture of clay and pomegranate juice. The effect, he looks both alluring and terrifying, like a living statue of some fierce god of war. And that was precisely the intention. For Babylonian merchants, makeup wasn't just about looking good. It was about projecting power dominance and a sense of otherworldly invincibility. You can almost hear one of them saying, "If I look like a god, maybe you'll think twice before trying to cheat me." But it wasn't just the eyes. Cheeks were painted too, and not just with any old pigment. You watch as a young woman grinds a block of red ochre against a flat stone, her hands stained the color of rust. Red ochre was a staple in Babylonian makeup kits, a symbol of vitality and strength. But it was also toxic, especially when mixed with other substances like lead or mercury. You glance at the woman's cheeks. They're flushed a deep, almost unnatural red, as if she's just run a mile. But it's not from exertion. It's the ochre, and the longer she wears it, the more it sinks into her skin, poisoning her slowly. Despite the health risks, the merchants slathered it on with abandon, believing that a painted face made them look wealthier, more imposing, and less human. In a way, it was a mask, a way to hide their true selves behind layers of color and shine. But why stop at the face? You follow the scent of something sweet and musky, and it leads you to a stall where a man is selling jars of Sunset Glow, a body oil made from crushed dates animal fat, and a dash of saffron. He dips a finger into the jar and smears the golden liquid across his forearm, where it glimmers like molten bronze. For good fortune in business, he says with a sly grin. It's not just about looking powerful. It's about looking prosperous, too. In a city as competitive as Babylon, a merchant who looked wealthy was assumed to be wealthy. And a wealthy merchant could demand higher prices, command more respect, and intimidate his competition. You spot a man standing near the entrance to a massive temple, his face painted to perfection. His eyelids shimmer with a dark blue pigment made from ground lapis lazuli, a luxury item imported from distant mines in Afghanistan. His cheeks glow with powdered malachite, a greenish hue that suggests he's connected, that he can afford to splurge on imported minerals rather than sticking to the common red ochre. The man catches you staring and raises a perfectly arched eyebrow. His lips curve into a slow, deliberate smile, and for a moment you feel as though you're staring at a god rather than a mere merchant. And that's exactly what he wants. Beneath all that makeup, beneath all those layers of pigment and oil and scented powders, he's just another man trying to make a living in a city full of schemers and sharks. But out here under the blazing Babylonian sun, he is whoever he wants you to believe he is. You continue through the bustling marketplace, dodging a group of children chasing each other through the crowd, their shrill laughter cutting through the dense, perfumed air. The scent is overwhelming, floral, musky, with a sharp undercurrent of something spicy and slightly acrid. It clings to your skin, seeps into your clothes, and you realize it's not just coming from the stalls selling perfumes. It's coming from the people themselves. In Babylon, scent was more than a luxury. It was a status symbol. Imagine walking down the main avenue, the broad expanse of brick-lined road that cuts through the heart of the city, with merchant stalls flanking both sides. Every few feet a new scent hits you. Myrrh, frankincense, rosewater, musk. Each one is distinct, layered, and in its own way, a declaration of power. You pause at a perfume merchant's stall. It's a small, neatly arranged display of tiny alabaster jars, each sealed with a wax stopper. The merchant, a man with graying hair and dark, sun-weathered skin, watches you with a keen eye. He lifts one of the jars and removes the stopper, holding it out for you to smell. This one, he says, is called Desert Night. It's made with rose petals, saffron, and a touch of ambergris. He swirls the jar under your nose and the scent hits you. A heady, almost intoxicating blend that lingers even after he's replaced the stopper. Only for the wealthy, he adds, smiling. A single drop is worth a month's wages. Perfumes in Babylon weren't just worn for pleasure. They were crafted as potent tools of influence. A rich, powerful scent could signal to others that you had access to rare and expensive resources. It could command attention, spark envy, even serve as a form of seduction. You watch as a woman approaches the merchant, her silk robe flowing behind her like a ripple of water. Her wrists glisten with oil, and as she moves, the scent of jasmine and musk wafts through the air. Heads turn. People step aside. It's as though she's carved a path through the crowd with scent alone. But not all scents were meant to attract. Some were crafted to intimidate. You notice a man standing near the entrance to a nearby temple, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes fixed on the crowd. He reeks of a strong, acrid perfume, a blend of frankincense and cassia oil. It's the kind of scent that sticks in your throat that makes your eyes water. It's an aggressive scent, almost repellent, and you can't help but think that's exactly the point. In the cutthroat world of Babylonian trade, scent could be a weapon. A merchant selling weapons might douse himself in something sharp and smoky, a warning that he's not to be crossed. A woman selling exotic spices might waft through the market, smelling of sandalwood and myrrh, luring customers in like a siren. But perfume wasn't just about personal branding. It was also a form of social currency. You move deeper into the marketplace where a group of men sit cross-legged in the shade, trading goods and stories. One of them, a portly man with a wide grin and a gold ring on every finger, is passing around a small glass vial. "Smell this," he says, waving it under the nose of a younger man. "Pure rose oil from Susa. Cost me 3 jars of wine and a week's worth of grain." The young man sniffs his eyes, widening. "It's strong," he says, and the older man nods, clearly pleased. "Too strong for a peasant," he says, tucking the vial back into his belt, "but just right for a king." Perfume in Babylon was as valuable as gold. A single jar of rose oil, harvested petal by petal, and distilled drop by drop, could be traded for a slave or a plot of land. And in a world where appearances were everything smelling like a king could be just as powerful as dressing like one. You pass a young boy selling tiny pouches of powdered incense, the kind that would be burned in temple offerings or worn inside a merchant's robe. The boy's clothes are ragged, his hair unkempt, but his wrists are streaked with oil, a blend of cinnamon and cardamom that cuts through the marketplace's heavier, muskier scents. 2 shekels, he says, holding up a pouch, guaranteed to make you unforgettable. And that was the point, wasn't it? To be unforgettable, to be noticed, to be seen as powerful, wealthy, desirable, even if you weren't. But in Babylon, scent was more than just a statement. It was a mask, a way to obscure who you really were, to hide your true intentions behind a veil of fragrance. You can almost see the merchants now, their faces painted, their bodies oiled and perfumed, moving through the marketplace like actors on a stage. And in a city as crowded and competitive as Babylon, everyone was playing a role. And the best actors always wore the most potent scents. You keep moving through the marketplace, the ground beneath your feet uneven with packed dirt and sun-baked clay. The scent of perfumes and oils clings to you now, seeping into your clothes, your hair. It's almost as if the entire marketplace is a single swirling cloud of scent, each layer a different story, a different merchant, a different purpose. But what exactly were they wearing? What was inside those alabaster jars, those clay pots, those tiny glass vials? You step up to a cosmetics stall where a woman with kohl-rimmed eyes and stained fingers is grinding something against a flat stone slab. The air here smells sharp and metallic, like hot iron mixed with crushed herbs. The woman dips a reed into the dark paste she's been grinding and holds it out for you to see. "Coal," she says. "Charred date pits, antimony, and a touch of soot." She smudges a line across her eyelid, the black streak glistening like oil under the sun. Keeps away the evil eye, she adds, winking. Coal was the staple, the foundation of every Babylonian makeup kit. It wasn't just for beauty. It was for protection, for intimidation, for marking status. The rich used finely ground antimony, a silvery metal that gleamed like starlight. The poor made do with crushed charcoal or soot mixed with animal fat. But coal was just the beginning. You lean over the table and pick up a small clay jar, its lid sealed with wax. The merchant watches you with a sly grin as you pry it open, revealing a thick, reddish paste. The scent is earthy, with a hint of something metallic that the merchant says is ochre. Red as the blood of a lion. Ochre, the mineral pigment that gave Babylonian merchants their signature flushed cheeks, was more than just a cosmetic. It was a warning. In a world where appearances were weapons, a man with blood-red cheeks was not to be trifled with. It was a way to appear fierce, powerful, even dangerous. But ochre wasn't the only option. You spot another jar, this one filled with a shimmery green powder. The merchant catches your eye and dips his finger into the powder, rubbing it against the inside of his wrist. Malachite, he says. Imported from Egypt. Very expensive. Malachite, ground to a fine powder, was used to paint eyelids and brows a deep, almost supernatural green. It was a favorite of the upper class, a way to show off wealth and connections. The merchant leans in closer, lowering his voice. Careful, though. Too much, and it'll eat through your skin. You shiver, suddenly, aware that beauty in Babylon came at a cost measured in sores, rashes, and eventually death. Next, you spot a small wooden box filled with tiny clay pots, each sealed with a plug of wax. The merchant pops one open, revealing a thick, greasy salve that glistens in the sunlight. The scent is overpowering, musky sweet with a smoky undertone. Crocodile fat, he says, grinning, mixed with saffron and rose oil. For the lips, imagine smearing crocodile fat across your lips every morning, coating them in a slick, oily balm that glistens like molten gold. It's meant to make you look wealthy, healthy, seductive. But in the heat of the Babylonian sun, that fat would melt running down your chin in greasy rivulets, leaving behind a sticky, rancid residue. And it wasn't just the men and women in the marketplace who wore these cosmetics. Priests and priestesses used even more elaborate mixtures. Black coal laced with powdered gold rose oil, blended with saffron and myrrh, red ochre mixed with blood. The gods themselves, depicted in statues and reliefs, were shown wearing thick lines of coal around their eyes, their cheeks streaked with crimson, their lips shining with oily gloss. But it wasn't just makeup that painted Babylon. You step into a side street where the scent of burning incense drifts toward you like a ghost. Inside a small, dimly lit workshop, a man is grinding something against a stone mortar. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You step closer, and he lifts his gaze, his eyes ringed with thick, black coal that stretches all the way to his temples. "Perfume," he says simply, and holds up the mortar for you to see. Inside, a sticky paste of crushed myrrh, rose petals, and ambergris glistens like molten resin. "Strong enough to raise the dead," he says, chuckling. You take a step back, your nose stinging from the overpowering scent. In Babylon, everything was a performance. And the bolder the performance, the better the chances of survival. The merchant dips his finger into the paste and smears a line across his wrist. "This one," he says, "is for the gods." He points to the tiny shrine in the corner of his shop. A crude clay figure of Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. Her eyes painted with coal, her lips stained with ochre. "A gift for her," he says. "And if she likes it, maybe she'll give me some luck." And in Babylon, luck was everything. You continue down the winding street, the din of the marketplace growing softer behind you. The scent of perfume still clings to you, wrapping itself around you like a ghostly shawl. But now, a different scent drifts through the air. The sweet, smoky aroma of incense mingled with the tang of burning herbs. You follow the scent to a small temple, tucked between two towering mud-brick buildings. Inside, priests and priestesses glide through the dimly lit halls, their eyes rimmed in black coal. their cheeks streaked with deep red ochre. Their movements are slow, deliberate, almost trance-like, as they carry bowls of smoldering incense to the altar. In Babylon, perfume wasn't just a cosmetic. It was a conduit to the gods. You step closer, peering at the altar, where a young priestess kneels her head, bowed her wrists, glistening with oil. She dips a finger into a small clay jar and touches it to her forehead, leaving behind a smear of golden ointment that shines like molten sunlight. Frankincense and myrrh, she whispers, eyes closed. A gift for Ishtar. Ishtar, the goddess of love, war, and fertility, was one of the most powerful deities in the Babylonian pantheon, and her followers believed that scent was a way to reach her. The perfumes burned in her honor were rich and intoxicating. Rose oil, ambergris, frankincense, and myrrh, each carefully chosen to invoke her favor. You can almost see the temple filled with smoke, the air thick and heavy with the scent of burning resins. The priests and priestesses sway as they chant, their voices low and rhythmic, each note resonating with the heavy beat of a bronze drum. And through it all, the scent of perfume hangs in the air, like a second skin wrapping itself around the worshippers, blurring the line between the mortal and the divine. But not all perfumes were meant for the gods. You step away from the temple, back into the alleyway, where a group of men sits cross-legged on the ground, passing around a small wooden box. One of them, a wiry man with sunken eyes and a sharp, crooked nose, pulls a tiny vial from the box and unstoppers it. This, he says, waving the vial, under the nose of the man next to him, is blood of the moon. The man sniffs, his eyes widening as the scent hits him. A dark, musky blend of black myrrh, amber, and something almost sweet like honey mixed with smoke. For luck, he asks, and the wiry man nods. For protection, he says, tucking the vial back into the box. Against spirits. In Babylon, perfume wasn't just a luxury. It was a shield, a way to keep evil at bay. You step closer and catch sight of another vial, this one filled with a thick, dark liquid that glimmers like molten tar. Crocodile blood, the man says, holding it up to the light, mixed with saffron and amber. Keeps the demons away. You shiver, imagining the feel of that dark, sticky liquid sliding across your skin, coating your wrists and neck, its scent cloying and sickly sweet. The idea that scent could ward off evil wasn't unique to Babylon. All across Mesopotamia, people believed that spirits could be driven away by strong smells, the sharper, the better. And so merchants wore amulets filled with pungent herbs and spices. Priests burned resinous incense to cleanse the air. And ordinary people doused themselves in oils that stank of sulfur and bitter roots. But some scents were meant to attract rather than repel. You hear the soft, tinkling sound of a bell and turn to see a woman stepping out of a nearby shop, her robes trailing behind her like a river of silk. Her skin shines with oil, and as she moves, the scent of jasmine and honey drifts through the air. Heads turn as she passes, men, women, even children, all drawn to the heady, sweet scent that seems to cling to her like a second skin. In Babylon, perfume could be a weapon of seduction, a way to charm, to lure, to ensnare. You step into the shop. She just left a dim, smoky room filled with tiny glass bottles, each stoppered with a plug of wax. The shopkeeper, a broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard, smiles as he sees you and waves you over. "You're looking for something special," he says, his voice smooth and honeyed. He picks up a small bottle, its glass surface etched with a swirling hypnotic pattern. "This," he says, pulling out the stopper, "is Heart's Desire. The scent rises up to meet you. sweet and floral with undertones of musk and something darker, more primal. It's the kind of scent that wraps itself around you, seeps into your skin, and refuses to let go. Guaranteed to make anyone fall in love, the shopkeeper says, his eyes twinkling, or at least to make them believe they have. But not all perfumes were created with such innocent intentions. You glance around the shop at the rows of tiny glass bottles lined up on the shelves. Some are filled with amber-hued oil that shimmers in the dim light. Others with thick, dark liquid that clings to the glass like tar. Not everything here is for love, the shopkeeper says, leaning in closer. Some are for vengeance. He pulls out another bottle, this one filled with a dark, sludgy paste that smells of sulfur and ash. A single drop, he says, and they'll never forget you. In Babylon, scent was more than just a way to smell good. It was a way to make a statement, to leave an impression to haunt someone long after you'd gone. And in a world where the line between love and war was razor thin, every merchant, every priest, every person walking the crowded streets knew that a single drop of the right perfume could change everything. You push through the crowded marketplace once again, the sun sinking lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the stalls. The scent of the market has changed, becoming heavier, muskier as the air cools and the wind picks up, carrying with it the mingled aromas of spices, incense, and sweat. But now the air is thick with something else: tension. You spot two merchants standing toe-to-toe, their faces inches apart, eyes locked in a glare that could cut glass. One of them, a tall, wiry man with sharply drawn kohl around his eyes, jabs a finger at his opponent's chest. His lips are stained a dark, sinister red, and his cheeks are flushed with an intense ochre that makes him look almost feverish. "You're trying to cheat me," he shouts, his voice echoing through the market. "The silk is rotten." The other merchant, a stout man with heavily painted eyebrows and a thick, greasy sheen of oil glistening on his forehead, sneers. "You're the one with the bad eyes," he retorts, crossing his arms over his chest. "Maybe that coal has gone to your brain." You stand back, watching as the two men continue to bicker, their voices rising, drawing a crowd. But you can't help but notice how both men seem to be using their appearance as a weapon. The heavy coal, the blood-red lips, the flushed cheeks. It's not just about looking good. It's about looking powerful, looking intimidating, looking like someone who can't be crossed. In Babylon, scent wasn't the only thing used to project power. Makeup was just as potent a tool. A mask, a shield, a weapon. And nowhere was that more evident than in business deals where merchants used cosmetics to psych out their rivals. Imagine a merchant preparing for a high-stakes negotiation. He sits before a polished bronze mirror, carefully applying layer after layer of kohl to his eyes, making them look larger, darker, more intense. He smears ochre across his cheekbones, giving himself a ruddy, almost aggressive look. Finally, he rubs a thin layer of crushed malachite over his eyelids, a shimmering green that catches the light every time he blinks. By the time he steps out onto the marketplace floor, he looks less like a man and more like a god. A god of war, a god of trade, a god who won't back down. You watch as the two merchants continue to argue, their faces inches apart, each trying to outstare the other. Finally, the wiry man takes a step back and spits on the ground, his darkly stained lips twisting into a sneer. "You're not worth my time," he says, turning sharply on his heel and striding away. His opponent watches him go, the sheen of oil on his forehead glistening in the waning light. Then, with a snort, he turns to the crowd and raises his arms. Fresh silks, he shouts, his voice booming, "The finest in Babylon." And just like that, the performance is over. The crowd disperses, the air clears, and the scent of oil and ochre mingles with the smell of roasting lamb from a nearby food stall. You keep walking, your eyes drawn to a small stall where a young woman is carefully painting her lips with a thin reed dipped in a dark, oily substance. Her hands are steady, her eyes half-lidded in concentration as she drags the reed across her bottom lip, leaving behind a thick black line, black lipstick. It's a startling look, bold, almost defiant. And in Babylon, it wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a way to send a message. Black was the color of death, the underworld, the gods of vengeance. And wearing black lipstick was a way to tell the world, "Don't mess with me." You can almost see her now, walking through the marketplace with her dark, glossy lips, her eyes rimmed in thick kohl, her cheeks streaked with crimson ochre. Every step she takes, heads turn. People step aside, but black wasn't the only intimidating color. You pass a group of young men, their faces painted in a wild array of hues, emerald green, cobalt blue, blood red. Their eyes are rimmed with thick kohl, their lips glistening with a reddish-brown paste made from crushed henna leaves. They swagger through the market, laughing and jostling one another, clearly looking to start trouble. The paint on their faces isn't just for show. It's a way to signal aggression, to intimidate, to warn off potential enemies. And in a city as crowded and cutthroat as Babylon, a little intimidation could go a long way. But what about those who couldn't afford the high-quality pigments and oils favored by the wealthiest merchants? What did they use? You stop at a small, shabby stall where a young boy is selling tiny clay pots filled with a gritty reddish powder. Ochre, he says, holding one up for you to see. 1 shekel for a whole pot. You pick one up, feeling the rough texture between your fingers. It's not as fine or as richly pigmented as the ochre sold in the fancier shops, but it'll do. And for those who couldn't afford even that, there was always soot, scraped from the bottom of a cooking pot and mixed with a little animal fat to make a crude, greasy coal. In Babylon, appearances were everything. And whether you were rich or poor, you found a way to paint your face, to cover your skin in scent and pigment, to project an image that wasn't entirely real, but wasn't entirely false either. Because in a city where everyone was watching everyone, was judging, everyone was looking for an edge. Sometimes the right mask was the only thing standing between you and ruin. The sun dips lower, bathing the city in a warm amber glow. Shadows stretch across the marketplace as the merchants begin to pack away their wares. But even as the stalls close, the scent of perfume and coal lingers in the air like a ghost, a reminder that in Babylon beauty was as much a part of daily life as trade and commerce. You continue your walk, your feet carrying you toward the towering ziggurat of Ishtar, its walls painted with vivid scenes of gods and goddesses, their eyes outlined in thick kohl, their cheeks adorned with bold splashes of ochre. In Babylon, the gods themselves were icons of beauty, and it wasn't unusual for the common people to mimic their divine appearance, hoping to channel their power. Imagine a merchant preparing for a big sale. He sits in front of a polished bronze mirror, carefully tracing thick black lines around his eyes, extending them out to his temples, creating the illusion of eyes as wide and intense as those of the god Marduk. He dips a reed into a pot of ochre and smears it across his cheeks, making them glow with a feverish intensity. Finally, he presses his lips together, staining them with a paste made from crushed berries and red clay. When he steps out onto the street, he's no longer just a man. He's a living, breathing god. Or, at least, that's what he wants you to think. And in Babylon, belief was everything. But there was more to this divine mimicry than just cosmetics. You walk past a shrine dedicated to Ishtar, its walls adorned with painted reliefs of the goddess herself, eyes lined in kohl, as dark as night lips, stained with ochre hair oiled and glistening like a river of ink. For the women of Babylon, Ishtar was the ultimate beauty icon, a goddess of love and war who could seduce kings and slay enemies with a single glance. And to look like Ishtar was to project power allure and the promise of divine protection. You watch as a group of young women gathers around the shrine, each one carrying a small clay jar. One of them, a girl no older than 15, kneels before the statue, unscrewing the lid of her jar and dipping her fingers into a thick golden paste. It's a blend of saffron rose oil and honey, a mixture reserved for offerings to the goddess. The girl smears a line of the paste across her forehead just below her hairline. Then she closes her eyes and whispers a prayer for beauty, for favor, for power. And when she opens her eyes again, they glisten with unshed tears, the kohl around them smudged and smeared. But it wasn't just women who sought to channel divine beauty. Men, too, adorned themselves with cosmetics in the likeness of the gods. You step into a nearby tavern, its smoky interior filled with men reclining on low couches, their faces shining with oil, their eyes darkened with kohl. One man, a hulking figure with arms as thick as tree trunks, raises a cup of wine and laughs. His lips painted a deep, bloody red. Marduk himself couldn't outshine me. Tonight, he bellows, thumping his fist against his chest. The others laugh, nodding in agreement. In Babylon, beauty wasn't just about attracting lovers or intimidating rivals. It was about embodying the very gods themselves. And to do that, a man or woman had to look the part. You move deeper into the tavern, where a man with a hawk-like nose sits alone in a dark corner. His eyes, narrowed to slits his lips, painted a glossy black. He watches the crowd with the cool, detached gaze of a predator, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the rim of his empty cup. In his lap, he cradles a small alabaster jar, its surface etched with swirling hypnotic patterns. Inside is a thick, inky paste, a blend of coal oil and something darker, something bitter. He dips a finger into the paste and smears a line of it across his cheekbone just beneath his eye. It's not a beauty mark, it's a ward, a symbol meant to protect against evil spirits, to keep the eyes sharp and the mind clear. In Babylon, the line between beauty and magic was thin, and cosmetics often served as more than mere adornment. They were talismans, protective amulets, signs of divine favor. But some merchants took it even further. You step outside the tavern and find yourself in a narrow alleyway where a group of men huddle around a makeshift fire. One of them, a wiry man with hollow cheeks and eyes that gleam like black stones, holds up a small clay pot. From the temple of Enlil, he whispers, his voice barely more than a rasp. Oil infused with the blood of a sacrificed lamb. The men lean closer, their eyes fixed on the pot as the wiry man pries it open. The scent that rises up is thick and sweet, almost cloying with a sharp metallic tang. He dips a finger into the oil and rubs it across his forehead just above his brow. For power, he says, his eyes rolling back in his head. For vengeance. And in Babylon, vengeance was as common as the dust on the ground. The air grows colder as the sun dips below the horizon, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The city is alive with the sound of merchants packing up their stalls, women calling their children home, the faint, mournful wail of a reed flute drifting through the night air. But even as the streets empty, the scent of perfume and oil lingers, a haunting reminder of the world Babylon's merchants lived in, a world where beauty was a mask, a weapon, a prayer, a curse. Night has fully fallen over Babylon, the marketplace now shrouded in shadows and flickering torchlight. The stalls are closed, but the streets are still alive, not with merchants and customers, but with those who prowl the city under cover of darkness. Thieves, gamblers, and fortune-tellers move through the alleyways, their faces obscured by the darkness and by something else, makeup. You pause in a narrow alley where a young woman crouches her back against a mud brick wall. Her eyes are rimmed with thick black kohl, drawn out to her temples in elongated feline shapes. Her lips glisten a dark, glossy red, the shade so deep it almost looks black in the dim light. She tilts her head back and laughs, the sound echoing down the alley like a cat's yowl. In Babylon, the night belonged to those who knew how to use their appearance to their advantage. For thieves and spies, makeup wasn't about beauty. It was about transformation. You can almost see it now, a thief smearing a dark, sooty paste across his cheekbones, creating the illusion of shadows where there are none. A woman applying a thin line of gold dust under her eyes to catch the light and distract her mark. But it wasn't just thieves who used makeup as a disguise. You hear the murmur of low voices and follow the sound to a nearby courtyard where a group of men sits cross-legged around a small, crackling fire. Their faces are painted with intricate patterns, swirling lines of black coal dots of red ochre, streaks of shimmering gold. At first glance, they look like performers, but as you step closer, you realize there's something else entirely. Spies, mercenaries, men who sell secrets as easily as they sell grain or wine. One of them, a tall, gaunt man with eyes like slits, catches your gaze and raises an eyebrow. "What are you looking at?" he asks, his voice low and dangerous. You look away, but not before you notice the line of dark kohl drawn under his jawline, a mark that wasn't there before a mark meant to send a message to those who know how to read it. In Babylon, makeup was a language, and those who spoke it fluently could say more with a single painted line than with 1,000 words. But it wasn't just about sending messages. Sometimes it was about concealing them. You move deeper into the city, your footsteps echoing off the narrow stone walls. The streets are nearly empty now, save for a few shadowy figures slinking from alley to alley. You catch sight of a man slipping into a tavern, his head wrapped in a dark cloth, his face obscured by a layer of thick, greasy kohl. His eyes dart nervously from side to side as he pushes through the crowded room and takes a seat in the back corner, his back to the wall. You follow him, taking a seat a few tables away. The air inside is thick with the scent of stale beer and sandalwood oil, the flickering light from the oil lamps casting long, distorted shadows across the walls. The man pulls a small clay jar from the folds of his robe and dips his finger inside, smearing a line of dark, oily paste across his brow. It's not kohl. It's something else. Something thicker, darker, almost tar-like. And as he rubs it into his skin, his entire face seems to change. His cheekbones appear sharper, his eyes narrower, his mouth thinner and more severe. It's a disguise, a crude one but effective enough in the dim, smoky light. In Babylon, makeup wasn't just about attracting attention. It was about diverting it too. You watch as the man leans forward, his dark, glistening eyes fixed on the entrance to the tavern. He's waiting for someone, and when that someone finally arrives, a short, stocky man with a face as round as the moon, the man smiles, his blackened lips curving in a slow, deliberate grin. But there's another side to the night in Babylon, a side that's softer, more seductive. You step back outside the cool night air washing over your skin like a balm. You pass a small courtyard where a group of women sits on woven mats, their eyes lined in thick kohl, their lips stained a soft, rosy pink. They're courtesans, each one more beautiful than the last, each one draped in flowing robes of silk and gauze that shimmer in the torchlight. Their wrists and ankles are smeared with perfumed oil, and as they move, the scent of jasmine and rose drifts through the air, mingling with the night's cool breeze. One of them leans back, her eyes half closed, her lips parted in a slow, lazy smile. "You like what you see," she purrs, running a finger along the line of kohl that extends from the corner of her eye to her temple. The line is long, almost too long, giving her eyes a slightly otherworldly look, a look that's both alluring and unsettling. In Babylon, courtesans were masters of illusion. They knew how to paint their faces to appear younger, older, more innocent, more dangerous. They could make their eyes seem larger or smaller, their mouths fuller or thinner, their skin smoother or more flushed. And in a world where appearance could mean the difference between a night of luxury and a night spent in the gutter, every brush stroke mattered. You step away, leaving the courtesans behind as you move further into the city. The streets are quieter now, the torches burning lower, the air colder and still. But the scent of perfume still lingers, sweet, musky, with a bitter, almost metallic undertone. It's the scent of Babylon after dark, a scent that hides more than it reveals, a scent that conceals secrets as easily as it attracts lovers. And in a city where everyone wears a mask, where beauty and deception walk hand in hand, it's a scent that you can never quite escape. The night deepens, and Babylon is wrapped in a cloak of shadow and moonlight. The streets are mostly empty now, save for a few stragglers stumbling home, their faces painted with streaks of smudged coal and the lingering scent of wine. You wander toward the western edge of the city, where the air is cooler, the streets quieter, and the scent of jasmine mingles with the distant smoke of a dying fire. Here, the houses are smaller, the walls crumbling, the people poorer. And yet even here, the obsession with appearance remains. You stop in front of a small, shabby stall where an old woman sits on a woven mat, her back hunched, her hair a tangled mess of gray. Before her are a few simple wares, tiny clay pots filled with powders and pastes, a handful of reeds used for application, and a single chipped bronze mirror. The woman catches your eye and beckons you closer. Her face is painted in a bizarre array of colors. Cheeks smeared with red ochre eyelids, dusted with a bluish-green powder lips, glistening with a greasy, dark substance. The effect is both startling and unsettling, like a mask that doesn't quite fit. looking to make someone fall in love. She asks, her voice a dry rasp. Or maybe you want to look like a god. You kneel beside her, eyeing the clay pots. Each one is labeled with a crude hand-drawn symbol. A serpent, a crescent moon, a dagger. What's this, you ask, pointing to a pot filled with a thick golden paste. Sun, God's blessing. The woman says, dipping her finger into the paste and smearing it across her forehead. The paste glistens in the moonlight, casting her entire face in a strange, ethereal glow. For those who want to be seen, she adds her eyes narrowing. For those who want to be feared, you can almost see it now. A merchant slathering the golden paste across his cheeks, his forehead, his eyelids, creating a mask that shines like molten gold. In the crowded marketplace, he would appear larger than life, a man touched by the gods, a man not to be trifled with. But not everyone wants to be seen. You watch as the old woman reaches for another pot, this one filled with a thick, dark paste that smells faintly of charcoal and sulfur. And this, you ask? Night's shadow, she says, smearing a line of the paste along her jawline. The dark substance absorbs the light, creating the illusion of shadow, of depth, for those who wish to disappear. In Babylon, makeup was as much about concealment as it was about transformation. You imagine a thief slinking through the darkened alleys, his face painted with dark lines and smudges that blend into the night, his eyes rimmed in black to appear hollow and sunken, his lips stained with ash to hide his identity. And in a city where enemies were as common as grains of sand, the ability to disappear could be just as valuable as the ability to dazzle. You rise to leave, but the old woman grabs your wrist, her bony fingers surprisingly strong. "Wait," she whispers, leaning closer. Her breath smells of stale wine and bitter herbs. "I have something else." From beneath her cloak, she pulls out a small clay vial, its surface etched with a swirling pattern of vines and thorns. "This," she says, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "is the eyes of the dead." You shiver, the hair on the back of your neck prickling. What does it do? The old woman smiles, her teeth yellow and cracked. "It lets you see," she says, tapping the side of her temple. "What others cannot." She uncorks the vial and dips a thin reed into the dark, oily liquid inside. The scent hits you, sharp, acrid, like burning leaves mixed with sour wine. The old woman drags the reed along her lower eyelid, painting a thin, dark line that glistens like wet ink. "Now watch," she says, her eyes widening. "Look closely." You do. And as you stare into her eyes, something shifts. The kohl around her eyes seems to shimmer and dance like shadows moving across water. And then you see it. A flash of something dark, something cold, something that doesn't belong. The old woman blinks, and just like that, the illusion is gone. "The eyes of the dead," she says, capping the vial. For those who need to see their enemies before their enemies see them. You step back shaken and turn away from the stall. But as you walk away, you can still feel the old woman's eyes on you, still hear her raspy voice echoing in your ears. In Babylon, makeup wasn't just a tool. It was a weapon, a shield, a curse. And for those who knew how to wield it, it could be the difference between life and death. you move further down the alley, the sound of the old woman's laughter still ringing in your ears. Ahead, a group of men sits huddled around a small, sputtering fire, their faces painted with bold, swirling patterns in red, black, and green. They chant softly, their voices low and rhythmic, their eyes half closed as they sway back and forth. One of them, a man with wild, tangled hair and eyes rimmed in thick black coal, lifts his hands to the sky, his painted face glistening with sweat and oil. "We call upon Marduk," he cries, his voice echoing against the mud brick walls. "Give us your power. Give us your strength." The others echo his words, their voices rising in a crescendo, the scent of burning herbs and incense wafting through the air. The fire flares up, casting their painted faces in stark, flickering relief. Eyes wide and wild cheeks flushed with ochre lips, stained with blood-red dye. In Babylon, makeup wasn't just a way to enhance beauty. It was a way to call upon the gods to channel their power, to become something more than human. And for those who believed, or who needed others to believe, it was a way to blur the line between man and God, between life and death, between what was real and what was not. The fire dies down, the chants fade to a low murmur, and one by one, the men lower their hands and close their eyes. The night is silent now, the city shrouded in darkness. But even in the quiet, the scent of perfume and smoke lingers, heavy, haunting, inescapable. The night air is heavy, pressing against you like a damp velvet curtain. Babylon's marketplace may be closed, but the city is still very much awake. The alleys are alive with whispers, the sound of footsteps echoing against mud brick walls, the scent of sandalwood oil and burning incense lingering like a ghost. You find yourself drawn toward a cluster of low buildings on the outskirts of the city, the perfumer's quarter. Here, the air is thick with fragrance. Every breath you take is a heady mix of myrrh, frankincense, and ambergris, with undercurrents of musk and rose. The streets are narrower here, the ground littered with discarded reeds and crushed flower petals. You step into a small, dimly lit workshop, where a man sits cross-legged on the floor, his hands stained with oil, his eyes rimmed in thick, smudged coal. Before him, rows of tiny clay pots are arranged in perfect lines, each one sealed with a wax plug. He lifts a pot and rolls it between his palms, his eyes fixed on the flickering oil lamp in the corner. "This," he says, holding the pot up to the light, "is the scent of a queen." You step closer, and he removes the wax plug, releasing a burst of sweet floral scent. Jasmine rose and something darker, almost smoky. The perfumer dips a reed into the thick, honey-colored oil and holds it under your nose. The scent is intoxicating, rich, and heady, a scent that clings to the skin like a secret. "Ambergris," he says, his voice low and reverent, "found in the belly of a whale, washed ashore by the gods themselves. Ambergris, a substance so rare and valuable that it was worth more than gold, more than silver, more than anything else in the Babylonian marketplace. And in a world where appearance was everything, to smell of ambergris was to smell like royalty." The perfumer sets the pot aside and reaches for another, a small unmarked jar filled with a thick, dark paste. And this, he says, his eyes glinting in the dim light, is the scent of a god. He opens the jar, and the scent that rises is almost overwhelming. A blend of frankincense, myrrh, and something sharp and bitter like burning herbs, Marduk's tears. He says, dipping a reed into the paste and pressing it against his wrist. The scent is smoky, musky, the kind that makes your eyes water and your skin tingle. In Babylon, the line between perfume and magic was thin, thinner than a reed dipped in oil. Perfumes weren't just worn for pleasure. They were worn to attract the gods, to summon spirits to ward off evil. You watch as the perfumer dips his finger into another jar, this one filled with a dark, greasy substance that gleams like wet ink. Black lotus, he says, rubbing the oil across his cheekbones. The scent is dark, almost sinister, a blend of crushed lotus petals, snake venom, and powdered charcoal. This one, he whispers, leaning closer, is for those who wish to disappear. You shiver, the hairs on the back of your neck standing up. In Babylon, a scent wasn't just a scent. It was a mask, a disguise, a weapon. And for those who knew how to blend the right oils and herbs, it could be a curse. You step outside the cool night air, a welcome relief from the heavy, cloying scents inside the perfumer's workshop. The streets are empty now, the city silent, but for the distant murmur of the river, you can almost hear it. The slow, steady rush of water against the stones, carrying with it the secrets of the city, the scent of oil and incense and blood. You follow the sound, your feet carrying you to the riverbank, where a lone figure stands silhouetted against the moonlit water. She's tall and thin, her dark hair hanging loose over her shoulders, her face painted with thick, dark lines of kohl that extend from her eyes to her temples. In her hands, she holds a small clay jar. The scent of rose and myrrh drifts toward you, mingling with the cool night air. She tilts the jar over the water, letting a single drop of oil fall into the river. The oil spreads out in a shimmering circle, its surface catching the moonlight like liquid gold. For Ishtar, she whispers, her eyes closed, for the goddess of love and war. In Babylon, the river was more than just a river. It was a gateway to the underworld, a conduit to the gods, a place where the living could reach out to the dead. And just as perfumes were used to anoint the living, they were also used to anoint the dead. You watch as the woman dips her finger into the jar and presses it against her forehead, leaving behind a glistening mark of oil. "May the goddess see me," she says, her voice barely more than a breath. "May she hear my prayer." And in the stillness of the night, you can almost feel it. The weight of the god's gaze, the scent of the dead, the lingering scent of oil and incense, drifting down the river like a prayer. You turn away from the river and begin the walk back to the marketplace, your mind heavy with the scents and secrets of the night. The city is quieter now, the torches burning low, the alleyways cloaked in shadow. But even in the silence, the scent of perfume and oil lingers, wrapping around you like a second skin. And in a world where everyone is wearing a mask, where scent can mean love or death, where a single drop of oil can summon the gods or curse an enemy, the air itself is a battleground. The night air grows colder as you wind your way back through the alleys of Babylon, the scent of perfume and incense still clinging to your skin like a second layer. The marketplace is empty now, the stalls shuttered, the cobblestones glistening with the moisture of the river mist. But the silence doesn't last. From somewhere up ahead, a burst of laughter echoes through the night, followed by the low, rhythmic thud of a drum. You follow the sound to a courtyard, where a group of men and women sits in a loose circle around a fire. Their faces are painted in bold, dramatic strokes, kohl tracing their eyes in elongated wing-like shapes, ochre slashed across their cheeks, their lips painted in glistening reds and purples. It's a party, but not the kind you'd expect. These people are dressed in dark robes, their heads wrapped in scarves that shimmer with gold threads. One woman rises to her feet, her eyes half-lidded, her lips stained a dark plum red. She holds a small clay pot in her hand, and as she sways to the beat of the drum, she dips her fingers into the pot and smears a line of dark paste across her collarbone. For Ishtar, she sings her voice low and melodic, for the goddess who dances beneath the moon. The others join in, dipping their fingers into tiny jars and painting symbols onto their skin. Spirals, crescent stars, each stroke deliberate, each line a prayer. This is no ordinary party. It's a ritual, a rite meant to honor the goddess of love and war, to call upon her power and channel her beauty. You watch as the woman raises her arms and begins to dance, her dark, kohl-rimmed eyes glistening in the firelight. Every movement is slow, deliberate, a calculated sway of the hips, a languid roll of the shoulders. And with every step, the scent of her perfume wafts through the air, a blend of myrrh and rose, smoky and sweet, a scent that hangs heavy in the night, like a lover's breath. But not everyone is here to honor the goddess. You spot a man standing at the edge of the circle, his arms crossed over his chest, his jaw set in a hard line. Unlike the others, his face is not painted. His eyes are dark and unadorned, and when the dancing woman passes by him, he reaches out and grabs her wrist. "What are you doing here, Lasha?" he asks, his voice low and sharp. The woman pulls her arm free, her painted lips twisting into a smirk. "What do you care?" she purrs, leaning closer. "Are you afraid of a little magic?" The man scowls, his nostrils flaring as the scent of her perfume washes over him. "You're playing with things you don't understand," he mutters. "The goddess isn't one to be trifled with." But Lasha just laughs, tossing her head back, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders like ink. "Maybe she's the one trifling with me," she says, her kohl-rimmed eyes sparkling with mischief. And with that, she spins away, her laughter echoing through the courtyard as the drumming grows louder, the scent of perfume and sweat mingling in the air, the painted dancers moving like shadows in the firelight. You step away from the courtyard, the sound of their chanting growing fainter as you move deeper into the city. But the scent of Lasha's perfume follows you, sweet and heavy, a scent that clings to the back of your throat like smoke. You find yourself standing before a small, nondescript building, a house simple and unadorned, its door hanging slightly open. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of burning herbs and hot wax. You step inside, and the sight that greets you is nothing short of eerie. In the center of the room stands a man, his back to you, his head bowed. His skin is smeared with dark, oily paste, a mix of coal and crushed lotus petals, and his arms are painted with spirals of red ochre, the lines winding up from his wrists to his shoulders like coiling snakes. Before him, a small fire burns the flames, dancing over a pile of smoldering herbs, frankincense, myrrh, and something bitter and acrid that makes your eyes water. The man reaches into a small clay pot and pulls out a handful of powder, tossing it into the fire. The flames flare up, turning blue, then green, then a deep, unsettling black. The man raises his arms and begins to chant, his voice low and guttural, his eyes rolling back into his head. And as the smoke curls around him, you realize that the scent rising from the fire isn't just herbs. It's something darker, something that smells like blood. In Babylon, scent was more than just a way to attract lovers or intimidate rivals. It was a way to speak to the gods, to summon spirits to open doors that were meant to remain closed. You step back, your heart pounding, the acrid scent of burning herbs stinging your nose. The man continues to chant, his darkened eyes fixed on the smoke as it rises, as it curls, as it twists into shapes that shouldn't be there. You turn and run your footsteps, echoing through the empty streets, the scent of perfume and burning herbs trailing after you like a shadow. You don't stop until you're back at the riverbank, the water rushing against the stones like a lullaby. You kneel by the water's edge, the cool mist washing over your face, the scent of the river, earthy clean, finally cutting through the lingering perfume that clings to your skin. In Babylon, beauty was a mask, scent was a weapon, and beneath it all, the truth lay hidden like a corpse beneath the river's dark, churning surface. The river's dark water laps against the stones, its steady murmur, a welcome contrast to the chaos of the marketplace. You close your eyes, letting the cool mist brush against your skin, washing away the lingering scent of burning herbs and oil. But even here, where the air is cleaner and the night is quieter, the scent of Babylon still lingers. Perfume, incense, smoke. You can almost hear it, the whisper of 1,000 secrets carried on the wind, each one more dangerous than the last. You open your eyes and spot a small boat drifting down the river, its hull dark and low in the water. A single figure sits in the stern, his face obscured by a dark hood, his hands resting on the oar. The scent of incense wafts toward you, sweet and smoky, mingling with the river mist. You watch as the boat glides toward the riverbank and stops. The man steps out, his movements slow and deliberate, his face still hidden by the hood. He lifts his head slightly, and for a brief moment you catch a glimpse of his eyes, rimmed in thick black kohl, the lines extending out to his temples like the wings of a bird. "Kothar," he says, his voice low and smooth. "Did you bring it?" From the shadows, another figure steps forward. A woman, her hair long and loose, her cheeks streaked with crimson ochre. She carries a small clay jar in her hands, the wax seal glistening in the moonlight. It wasn't easy to find, she says, her voice tense, and it wasn't cheap. The man steps forward, his eyes fixed on the jar. "Is it pure?" The woman nods, her dark eyes glinting, pure as a priestess's tear. In Babylon, that was no small claim. You watch as the man takes the jar from her hands, his fingers trembling as he peels away the wax seal. The scent that rises is thick and cloying, a blend of ambergris and rose undercut with something darker, something that smells like charred wood and blood. For him, the woman asks, her voice dropping to a whisper. The man nods his jaw tight. He'll never forget me now. You watch as he dips a finger into the dark, oily paste and smears it across his wrist, the scent wrapping around him like a shroud. In Babylon, scent could be a gift, a curse, a promise, and tonight, it's a weapon. You turn away, your heart pounding, and make your way back through the alleys, the scent of ambergris and rose still clinging to your skin. The city is quieter now, the streets empty, the shops closed, the air heavy with the scent of smoke and ashes. You pass a small, darkened house, its window shuttered, its door hanging slightly ajar. From inside, you hear the faint, melodic sound of a woman singing. The voice is soft, almost a lullaby, but there's a sadness in it that sends a chill down your spine. You step closer, peering through the gap in the door. Inside, a woman sits before a bronze mirror, her face painted in bold, theatrical strokes, kohl tracing her eyes in the sharp, angular lines, her lips stained a dark blood red, her cheeks streaked with a shimmering golden paste. She sways back and forth as she sings, her eyes half closed, her fingers dipping into a small jar of black paste. With each stroke, she drags the paste across her skin, creating a dark, swirling pattern that winds up her neck and across her jaw. For the dead, she sings, her voice low and haunting. For the ones who see but do not speak, you step back, the hair on your neck prickling. In Babylon, makeup was more than a mask. It was a language, a spell, a ritual. And for those who knew how to use it, it was a way to speak to the dead. You keep walking, your feet carrying you toward the ziggurat of Ishtar, its towering walls rising against the night sky. The scent of incense grows stronger as you approach, mingling with the sweet, heady fragrance of jasmine and frankincense. A line of priests and priestesses stands before the temple, their faces painted in identical patterns. Eyes rimmed in thick, black, cold cheeks, smeared with crimson ochre lips, stained with a dark, glossy paste. They chant in unison, their voices low and rhythmic, their hands raised to the sky. For Ishtar, they say, their voices rising as one. For the goddess of love and war. You watch as one of the priests steps forward holding a small alabaster jar high above his head. The scent that rises is thick and cloying, ambergris and rose undercut with something sharp and bitter like charred herbs and smoke. The priest dips his fingers into the jar and drags the paste across his forehead, creating a dark, crescent-shaped mark that glistens in the moonlight. For her favor, he says, his voice echoing through the temple courtyard. For her vengeance, the other priests and priestesses follow suit, each dipping their fingers into the jar, each marking their foreheads with the same dark, crescent-shaped symbol. The scent of ambergris and rose hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the incense smoke, seeping into your clothes, your skin, your bones. In Babylon, scent was more than a fragrance. It was a weapon, a prayer, a curse. And tonight, as the priests and priestesses sway before the temple of Ishtar, as their voices rise and fall in rhythmic unison, the scent of ambergris and rose hangs heavy in the night, a scent that will not be forgotten. You turn away, your heart pounding, and make your way back through the empty streets, the scent of the ritual still clinging to you like a second skin. In Babylon, the air is never clean, never empty, never pure. And as you walk, the scent of ambergris and rose follows you, heavy, haunting, inescapable. The scent of ambergris and rose clings to you like a haunting melody as you wander through the darkened streets of Babylon. The night is deep now, the moon a silver crescent hanging low over the city's ziggurats. The air is cooler. The marketplace long since closed, but the scent of oil and incense still lingers like a ghost. You find yourself standing outside a small dilapidated house with its shutters drawn tight. The faint flicker of a lamp glows behind the wooden slats, and the muffled sound of voices drifts through the night air. You step closer, pressing your ear against the door, and hear them, the hushed, urgent whispers of a man and a woman. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of burning herbs and crushed flowers. A man sits cross-legged on the floor, his face painted with dark coal and crimson ochre, his eyes wild and bloodshot. Before him, a woman kneels, her hair disheveled, her cheeks streaked with tears. In her hands, she clutches a small clay jar, its lid sealed with wax, its surface etched with symbols that seem to shift and writhe in the firelight. "You said it would work," she hisses, her voice raw with desperation. "You said he'd love me." The man closes his eyes, his head falling forward. "The gods are fickle," he murmurs. Perhaps they did not hear. The woman's lips tremble, and she lifts the jar, thrusting it toward him. "I paid you everything I had," she cries. "Everything." The man opens his eyes, and for a moment they glisten with something dark and dangerous. "Then you must give more," he says, his fingers reaching for the jar. "Or try a stronger scent." You step back, your heart pounding, as the woman's sobs echo through the night. In Babylon, love was a transaction, a ritual, a scent. And for those desperate enough, perfume could be a curse that lingered long after the bottle was empty. You turn away and continue down the alley, the scent of burning herbs and rose oil still clinging to your skin. You pass a group of women gathered beneath a swaying lantern, their faces painted in bold, striking patterns, coal drawn in dark, dramatic lines, their lips stained with crushed berries, their hair perfumed with oil. They laugh and chatter, passing a small jar of thick golden paste from hand to hand. One of them dips her finger into the jar and smears a line of the paste across her collarbone, her skin glistening in the lamplight. "For Marduk," she says, tilting her head back and closing her eyes. "For the god of power." The others follow suit, painting their necks, their wrists, their cheeks with the golden paste, each line a prayer, each smear a wish. For Ishtar, one of them murmurs, pressing her finger to her lips. For the goddess of love. You watch as they move through the ritual, their eyes half-lidded, their voices rising and falling like the rhythm of a prayer. And with each stroke of oil, each line of coal, they become something more than women. They become goddesses, avatars of Ishtar and Marduk, embodiments of love and power. But not all prayers are answered. You step away your feet, carrying you toward the temple district, where the air is thick with the scent of incense and burning resin. The ziggurat of Ishtar looms against the night sky, its walls painted with scenes of warriors and lovers, each one adorned with coal-lined eyes and cheeks stained with crimson ochre. You pass through the temple gates, your footsteps echoing against the stone floors. The air here is heavy with perfume, jasmine, rose, sandalwood, each scent layered upon the last, creating a cloud of fragrance so dense it feels like walking through a dream. You spot a priestess kneeling before a statue of Ishtar, her head bowed, her arms raised. Her wrists and ankles are smeared with a thick, dark paste that glistens in the torchlight, a blend of myrrh and cassia oil so strong it stings your eyes. For the goddess, she chants her voice, a low, melodic hum. For her beauty, for her power, for her vengeance. The other priestesses join in their voices, rising and falling in rhythmic unison, the scent of myrrh and cassia oil washing over you like a wave. They sway back and forth, their faces painted in identical patterns, coal lining their eyes like wings ochre slashed across their cheekbones, their lips glistening with oil. And in that moment, they are no longer women. They are gods, goddesses, spirits from the underworld come to life. And with every breath, the scent of their perfume fills the temple, rising like a cloud to the heavens. You step away, your head spinning the scent of myrrh and cassia, clinging to your clothes, your hair, your skin. Outside, the streets are empty, the air colder, now the night darker. You make your way back toward the river, the sound of water rushing against the stones like a lullaby. But even here, where the air is cooler and the wind is stronger, the scent of the perfume still lingers, heavy, haunting, inescapable. It wraps around you like a shroud, a memory, a curse, and as you close your eyes, you can still hear the priestess's chant, still feel the warmth of the oil, still smell the scent of myrrh and cassia rising like smoke toward the stars. In Babylon, perfume wasn't just a luxury. It was a prayer, a weapon, a promise. And for those who knew how to wield it, it was a curse that would not be washed away. Not by river water, not by time, not even by death. The moon hangs high over Babylon, a pale, spectral eye, casting its cold light over the city's rooftops and alleys. The streets are empty now, the marketplace silent, but the scent of perfume and incense still lingers in the air, thick, cloying, a ghostly presence that refuses to fade. You walk along the riverbank, the cool mist brushing against your skin, carrying with it the mingled scents of jasmine, rose, and something darker, something sharp and metallic, like burning herbs and iron. You follow the scent to a small stone building set apart from the rest of the city. The door is slightly ajar, a faint glow spilling from within. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of burning resin, the smoke rising in curling tendrils toward the ceiling. A man stands before a low stone altar, his back to you. His arms raised, his hands smeared with a dark, oily paste. that glistens in the firelight. His eyes are wide and wild, lined in thick, smudged kohl. His cheeks streaked with crimson ochre. Before him, a small clay pot sits on the altar. Its lid removed, its contents shimmering like molten gold. The man dips his fingers into the pot and drags them across his forehead, creating a dark, crescent-shaped mark that glows in the firelight. For Marduk, he whispers, his voice trembling, for vengeance. You watch as he dips his fingers into the jar again, his movements slow, deliberate. He smears another line of paste across his chest, his skin glistening with oil, his scent rising like a cloud of smoke. In Babylon, scent wasn't just a fragrance. It was a weapon, a prayer, a curse. You turn away, the sound of the man's chanting echoing through the empty room as you slip back into the night. The streets are darker now, the wind colder, the scent of burning resin still clinging to you like a shadow. You pass a small, unlit stall where a woman sits cross-legged on the ground, her head about her hair hanging in dark, tangled strands. Before her, a small clay pot sits in the dirt, its surface cracked and stained. She reaches for the pot, her hands trembling, and lifts the lid. The scent that rises is sharp and bitter, like crushed herbs and old blood. The woman dips a finger into the dark, oily substance inside and smears it across her lips. Her eyes are wide and unblinking, her face pale, her lips glistening with a dark, oily paste. For the dead, she whispers, her voice barely more than a breath. For those who watch, in Babylon, scent wasn't just about attracting lovers or intimidating rivals. It was a way to call upon the spirits, to reach across the veil and speak it to those who had crossed over. And for those who knew how to mix the right oils and herbs, it was a way to open doors that were meant to stay shut. You move away, your footsteps echoing in the silence as you make your way back toward the river. The air is colder now, the wind sharper, the scent of burning resin and crushed herbs still hanging heavy in the air. You reach the riverbank, the water black, and still the moonlight rippling across its surface like shards of glass. You kneel by the water, dipping your hands into the cool, dark current, letting the river wash away the oil and ash that clings to your skin. But even here the scent lingers, heavy, haunting, a reminder that in Babylon beauty was more than just a mask. It was a weapon, a shield, a curse. And for those who knew how to wield it, it was a way to control the world around them, or be consumed by it. You close your eyes, the wind whispering through the reeds, the scent of rose and jasmine drifting through the air like a prayer. You remember the painted faces, the blackened eyes, the crimson-streaked cheeks. You remember the priestess chanting before the altar, her wrists and ankles smeared with oil, her eyes dark and unblinking. And as you sit there, the sound of the river rushing against the stones, the scent of perfume and oil wrapping around you like a shroud, you realize that in Babylon, scent wasn't just a tool of the living. It was a gift for the dead, a way to remember, a way to forget, a way to haunt. The night is still now, the city of Babylon, shrouded in silence. The river flows on its dark waters, glimmering beneath the moonlight, carrying with it the scents of rose and ambergris jasmine and frankincense. The wind is softer now, a gentle breeze that drifts through the empty streets, stirring the ashes of the fires that have long since burned out. You close your eyes, letting the cool night air wash over you, the scent of the river mingling with the lingering perfume that clings to your skin. You can still hear the echo of chants carried on the wind, the faint, melodic hum of a priestess's prayer, the soft murmur of a merchant's whispered curse. But the city is asleep now, its people tucked away behind closed doors, their painted faces washed clean, their perfumes and oils locked away in tiny clay jars. The marketplace is empty, the altars cold, the firelight long extinguished. And as you sit there, the river lapping against the stones, you can feel the weight of the night settling over you like a heavy velvet blanket. The scent of jasmine and rose lingers in the air, sweet and haunting, a reminder of the masks we wear, the secrets we keep, the stories we tell ourselves to get through the night. Breathe in. Let the scent of the river carry you away. Let the sound of the water wash over you, soft and steady, like a lullaby. And as you drift off to sleep, remember that in Babylon, scent was more than just a fragrance. It was a prayer, a memory, a ghost,